Star Wars only. I don't know what the fuck your problem is.
I know we all weren't too happy remembering The Last Jedi yesterday. Yesterday was the 1 year anniversary for The Last Jedi, at least on the day of this recording. And the day after The Last Jedi is the 2 year anniversary of Rogue One. And this was the very first spin-off film that we had from the new Disney, Star Wars and just Star Wars in general. We've never had a spin-off film till now. It was something that George Lucas wanted to do, and that Lucasfilm wanted to do, and now it, finally happened. And so, a lot of people like Rogue One. And looking back, I really enjoyed this movie because going into this, I felt bad because I really didn't want to see this film. I was going for a midnight release and everything, or not midnight release, but going there for like the release of the movie the day of, and I met up with some friends, and it was a good time. But I wasn't anticipating the movie because I was like, I know how it ends. Not only I didn't know that they all died at the end, but I was like, what are they gonna do? Not get the plans? There's not a lot of tension in this movie. So I didn't really see the merit for it already, but I was decently surprised when I watched the film, and one of my biggest complaints was that it felt like it was just a big old fan film. But now, looking back at it, after something like The Last Jedi, and after something like Solo, it kind of makes me go, you know what? I wouldn't mind getting films like that every so often. Because there was an article that they put out today where it was like 20 of the biggest problems with, this is by CBR, and it talks about the 20 biggest problems about the Rogue One film. And the number one problem is that they say it's too close to great, but it's not, it's not great. It's really close. It's got so much going for it, but it kind of misses on the executions. And that's how I feel about this film. I've always said the very first 40 minutes of it are pretty boring. The characters in this film are pretty boring in general. I mean, they don't intrigue me much. People back then when it came out, everyone loved it. Everyone gave me shit for not remembering Cassian Andor's name, but now he's getting his own series, and people were like, oh, I don't really want him to be a series. And so it's confusing for people at Lucasfilm where they look back and they're like, well, you guys really liked Rogue One, so we're going to give you a show about the characters. And we look back at it and it's like, we like it, don't get me wrong, we like it, but we don't like it that much. We want a spin-off, series or show for one character in the film. So there's a lot that goes in with Rogue One that's really well. I like the fan parts of it where they do original trilogy callbacks with the guy from the Cantina bar and everything, and they do a lot of stuff like that continuously. C-3PO and R2-D2 were kind of shoved in the film and stuff like that I didn't really enjoy, but it's a nice little chuckle. And the action at the end is by far the best part of it. The whole Darth Vader scene with him in the hallway, that's something that you make solely for the fans. That didn't really drive the plot or anything or do anything to really enhance the story. It just was a badass scene. And things like that aren't too shabby from time to time. Even looking at The Last Jedi, a lot of people hate the story like I do, and a lot of people don't like it. But when it came to that scene with Holdo and she, went through the ship, I have a lot of problems with how that works in terms of Star Wars, because hyperspace, no one's ever used it like that. But still, besides that, it was still a beautiful and badass scene. It was like, oh my god, that was pretty cool to look at. So there's stuff like that Star Wars can do and keep doing. But if you gotta do stuff like Rogue One does, where you make badass scenes simply for the fans. It's kind of a fan film in a way. It's a spin-off film. It doesn't impact the episodic saga too much at all, and I kind of like that. And I kind of miss a movie like that. And, we could talk about Han Solo as well, and or Solo, Star Wars Stories, what's the real name is. And that one was okay, but it's not Rogue One. Rogue One is arguably the best one that Disney has come out with recently. People say it's better than The Force Awakens. I might disagree a little bit, but I have a hard time with it because I genuinely enjoy watching Rogue One, especially the last half of it when they get onto a Scarif and they just, they go to fucking town. I love that, and everyone else likes that too. And so it had a lot going for it, and it had a lot that it did right, and I really wish Lucasfilm could look back at that and say, alright, well, they liked some of the action that we put in there, some of the stuff that just was unique and different. Some of the things they did in that film were things that we haven't seen before. They were creative, and I like that. There was a lot of problems with it, like I said, with the characters. Saw Gerrera died in the dumbest way ever. He's like, I'm not going to run anymore, or something like that. I'm like, well, what are you facing? A pile of rocks that are about to hit you? That's not really poetic, it's just kind of stupid. I mean, whatever. So, there's problems I have with the film, don't get me wrong. But it definitely was a step in the right direction. Especially after The Force Awakens, where it's like, alright, I don't want you to just copy the original trilogy. Rogue One was like, okay, well, you're kind of in the original trilogy era, but you're making your own story, and it's not that big of a deal, but it's interesting, and it's fun to watch. but it missed the points on the characters. It was a very forgettable character movie. You know, you look back, you're like, oh man, that was a really fun movie to watch, but the characters were pretty boring. Kind of like for me with Suicide Squad. I didn't really like that movie at all. So I think Rogue One is a step in the right direction. And I hope they continue to look at films like that. And the spin-off films have by far been the more interesting ones for me. I didn't like Solo, a Star Wars story, but it also was one of those films where it's like it got some of the beats right, but it really didn't hit the notes properly. It really didn't. It didn't deliver on what we really wanted it to do. You know, if that makes any sense at all. I'm sorry if it doesn't, but it's kind of like it's a passing grade. You know, just you're barely passing by. It's a C. I don't know how your grading system works, but around here, if you get a C, that's passing. You know, it's you did all right. You know, so that's how a lot of these spin-off films have been for me, passing. And I hope they can bump it up to a B or an A eventually. But right now, I'm okay with passing, especially considering The Last Jedi was a big fat failure. So tell me your thoughts. Do you like Rogue One looking back 2 years ago? I think it's a good one to look back on. I think it's a good one to enjoy, so I might go watch it right now. I don't know. Star Wars Only. Hope you guys enjoy this talk. I'll see y'all next time, and may the Force be with you, always.